Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. I'm going to have another special college football podcast as well. And for this podcast, I'm going to be going over the hirings of the coaching carousel from college football and some of the notable quarterback changes as well, and kind of break that down real quick on if it was the right move or wrong move. So let's get started with the coaching changes, and we'll get started with the biggest one from the cycle, and that was Bill Belichick going to North Carolina. To me, I feel like this is a good move, but I don't feel like this is the great, spectacular move that a lot of people try to make it out to be. Bill Belichick, he'll obviously get the defense going, but again, he does not, have a good handling on offensive personnel, which means whatever offense coordinator he has to be, really good offensive mind in order to make things work. And besides Josh McDaniels, he has a lot. The other OCs that he's tried out hasn't been that good. Um, so I'm just, and obviously Josh McDaniels is in the NFL, so he's not going to have him as the OC. I'm not sure. Obviously, there's also the other aspect of him just trying to relate to the kids. I know he has a young girlfriend and all that, but it's just like I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make that connection or not, or if he's going to be able to get by with just treating this like the NFL and like a business, um, versus trying to adapt on the college level. I'm not sure. But because of his pedigree and all that, and because I know he can at least prove their defense. That's why I said it's the ACC, so it's not like it's the SEC. It's like I feel like that's why I said it's a good hire, but I'm not sure if it's just a great hire. Another one is, we'll stay in the ACC here, was Wake Forest hiring Washington State's head coach. This was actually a surprising move that not only Dave Clawson stepped down, which was smart for him because Wake Forest is going in a downward direction the last 2 years, but also it was a surprise that the Washington State head coach took the job, because the kind of persona of the Washington State head coach is like, hey, even though none of the Power Four conferences accepted us, we had to get relegated to Mountain West or Independence, whatever you want to call it. It's like, we're a good program and Washington State's good and all that, and then all of a sudden now I guess he saw the writing on the wall that, yeah, I just need to be Power Four conference. So he's taking this job. Now, because Wake Forest is in a full-on rebuild, I don't expect them to have immediate success, but I feel like um, maybe down the line, because he's had two good quarterbacks in Cam Ward and Josh Mader. He definitely hasn't, can spot a talent quarterback. So I feel like not this year, but a couple years down the line, once he's found the quarterbacks he wants to recruit or find the transfer world, then I feel like maybe Wake Forest can potentially be good enough to like consistently make bowl games. Next, we'll go to the. Well, I'm trying to make sure there's no other ACC school here. Yeah, there's not. So we'll go to the Big Ten, and we'll go with Purdue, and high end Barry Odom. Now, if you're Purdue's case, this is a great hire. Barry Odom has proven on, at least the Mountain West level, that he can get the job done. Having UNLV in the Mountain West Championship game back-to-back years. But if I'm Barry Odom, I don't know why this is the job you would want to accept. Like, if I was Barry Odom, I'd rather just be a UNLV another year and wait for a better job to come on than Purdue, who's the bottom feeder of the Big Ten. Now we'll see if he can end up making them better. Like, maybe he can have an impact like Kirk Sinay did for Indiana and get them to the playoffs maybe down the line. Um, I I feel like out of the people they could potentially get as the greatest, that's why it's perfect. But yeah, I was just surprised that Barry Odom chose them as all. Um, and then in the and that was and there's actually no um, SEC hires, so now we go to the Big 12. And West Virginia hires Rich Rodriguez, who used to be with the program, head coach back in the day before he then went to Arizona, and then has recently been in Jackson State. This is an excellent hire because if you're West Virginia, you want a West Virginia guy because that was not Neil Brown. So I feel like, and obviously Rich Virginia is an excellent offensive mind. So this is an excellent hire in that regard. Now, um, as far as West Virginia having success in the Big 12 goes, it would depend on who he hires as his defensive coordinators. Because if he can have a good defense, then West Virginia can be serious Big 12 contenders. But not, then at least with this hire, at least you should be still making bowl games at this point and still be somewhat relevant. And I feel like Rich Rodriguez could potentially have success year one, to where he's not going to need to not make a bowl game and work the way ground up. I feel like there's pieces there to where he can have instant success. And what I mean by that specifically is just make a bowl game this year, and then maybe year two, year three, and then he contends for like a Big 12 title. And the other Big 12 school is UCF with bringing back Scott Frost. Scott Frost is the one, as you remember, that led UFC to that undefeated season, didn't get a playoff berth. And that's why a lot of UCF fans call themselves the champions that year. This was a interesting hire. To say less, I was shocked by it because of how Nebraska went for Scott Frost when he was there. But if you're UCF, it's like, he fits with the culture there, he fits with the program there. And obviously the Big 12 is easier than the Big 10 to like get, success. So I feel like this is a good hire. Now, I do feel like this is a full-on rebuild, so you're not going to see immediate success in year one. But again, a couple years down the line, I feel like there could be something there. And now there's a couple of G5 hires that were interesting. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are some that caught my eye. One was obviously UNLV hiring Dan Mullen, the former Mississippi State and Florida head coach. That was an excellent hire if you are UNLV. I know his last year at Florida wasn't that good, but I thought Florida, dropped the ball and letting him go. Now Florida's finally starting to show a little bit of progression where they're going to sell for Bailey Napier, but for a while they looked like they did the wrong thing there, because Dan Mullen knows his offense, and if you're UNLV, it's like you're in the prime position going forward, because now with like Boise State, Colorado State, Utah State, San Jose State, with them going to the Pac-12, UNLV is going to be the cream of the crop of the Mountain West, and it's going to be basically their conference to lose mostly every year going forward, starting 2026. And if you're UNLV, it's like if you can just go undefeated, have a good not conference schedule, and be a good team or two, and then go undefeated, and then you can be that G5 or G6 team that makes the playoffs every year. So I like that move for UNLV there. That was an excellent hire. Another hire that I thought was really good was Utah State hiring Bronco Mendenhall. We know how he did at BYU all those years. We know how he did at Virginia. And even this last year at New Mexico, he had New Mexico one win away from a bowl game, which is crazy because they're never a good program. That's how good Bronco Mendenhall is at rebuilding programs. And Utah State is in a rebuild. So I do feel like he can keep them bowl eligible for the first couple years, and then a couple years down the line, then he can start contending for Pac-12 titles. I really like this hire a lot. And then the other hire that I thought was pretty interesting was Washington State. With Jake Dicker going to Wake Forest, he decided to bring up an FCS coach in Washington State. Jimmy Rogers, South Dakota State, has won multiple championships or multiple semifinals appearances in the FCS playoffs, the last 3 or 4 years. So I feel like Washington State shouldn't have a huge drop off there. They'll be independent this year, but then once the new Pac-12 forms in 2026, then I feel like Washington State can be definitely a contender in 2026 going forward. So those are all the coaching hires I want to focus on there. And I guess one more that I want to focus on real quick is just in the Sun Belt. So Southern Miss hires Charles Huff, who's been the Marshall head coach for years, and it's very rare when you're a head coach of a good program in the conference, one of the top programs in the conference, and you take a job at one of the worst programs in that same conference. Like, that is very rare. Like, imagine a coach at LSU taking the job at, let's say, Mississippi State or Vanderbilt, the lower NFC. This doesn't really make sense. So I'm curious to see how that works. So good for them getting that hire. Now for the notable quarterback changes. I like Carson Beck to Miami. Mario Cristobal has a good offensive machine running there. And if you're back, this is going to help redraft your image because the ACC obviously is not as hard as the SEC. So as long as Carson Beck just cleans up his interceptions from last year and has fully recovered from his shoulder surgery that he had missed the playoffs with, then I feel like that's a good move there. And then John Meter, the Washington State quarterback, going to Oklahoma to follow his OC there. That's a great move, you're Oklahoma, because you desperately need to upgrade a quarterback. And because um, if you're Oklahoma, you know 2 of the 3 years in the era post Lincoln Riley, you've been under 500, so you gotta get something going there. Um, the Cal quarterback Fernando Mendoza, Indiana, that one honestly did not make much sense at all. Um, I understand he's another veteran for Indiana, so you don't have to go in a full on rebuild this year. So you at least still make a bowl game. But it's like with that quarterback, you're not going to make the playoffs like you did last year. So that's why I was like, you know, because if Indiana would have gotten like a John Meter quarterback, then you're talking, you know. But yeah, that was just kind of puzzling there. And then Devon Dampier, the New Mexico quarterback going to Utah, I thought was an excellent move. If he followed his OC John Beck, who New Mexico had a top 10 offense last year. So I feel like that could kind of reviolate hopefully Utah's offense, who was down the dumps last year with all the quarterback injuries and the bad OC play calling in general. Um, Malik Murphy, the Duke quarterback, going to Oregon State. You know, so basically going from being a bona fide starter at the Power 4 level to okay, now I'm going to lead that to go to the G6 level independent level. That just didn't make any sense right there. But good for Oregon State to get him. Um, Miller Moss, the USC quarterback going to Louisville, I thought was pretty interesting. I feel like he fits Louisville. Again, he's going to be easier conference season than the Big Ten, and I feel like he can have success there. The Tulane quarterback, Darian Munsaw, going to Duke to replace Murphy. That's a good replacement if you're Duke there. Um, Caden Salter going to Colorado. It's not guaranteed that he'll be the starter because there's a true like 5-star freshman quarterback coming in. But I'm going to guess he's going to start at least for a little bit until that freshman quarterback's at speed. And if you're Colorado, that's a good that's a one of the good enough replacements you can do for with Shadur leaving. And then Jackson Arnold, the Oklahoma quarterback going to Auburn, I thought was interesting. We'll see he has a resurgence there. Connor Wegman, the A&M quarterback going to Houston, I thought was interesting. And then last but not least, I thought Matthew Sloka, that UNLV quarterback that backed out of the season, decided not to play the rest of the year to redshirt because UNLV wouldn't pay him. Then, in fact, he's going to James Madison, which is a good G5 program, but I just thought it was interesting. I know P4 schools want him after that. So it just shows, you got to be careful there, the NIL and all that. So those are the kind of like the top quarterbacks I want to focus on there. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel and tell me about me. Thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day.